Hi, and welcome to Women in Power Active. I am your host, Jacalyn Gross, and my co host is Erica Mann. And we are interviewing today Sarah McCormack, who is a mountain runner. And I wanted her to start out by telling us a little bit about herself, her background, and kind of how she started basically being active.
Yeah, so I ran since I was little. I grew up in Michigan, and Michigan, where we lived, was very flat. And I was quite into running and into soccer as well. And then, I met Jackie at Michigan State, so that was on the cross country and track team. Jackie can probably attest that I wasn't exactly like setting the world on fire with my running in Michigan State. So I was just sort of, definitely middle of the pack runner would be a kind way of putting it. But yeah, did cross country and track there, and then moved to the UK, where I got into, well, we call it fell running here because very locally the mountains are called fells, but the sport generally is called mountain running. And so got into that, and it's been, really fun. Obviously you get to travel some really scenic places. So really enjoying it, apart from right now because I can't travel anywhere.
Right.
But yeah, it's a really fun sport.
I think it's funny, Sarah, that you like have an accent now.
I know. I was like, should I tell her I have a weird accent now? Yeah. I know, it went really weird because like at first I lived in England, but I moved to Ireland and Scotland as well, and then my boyfriend, he's Irish, so like I just get all these different like influences.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. I don't blame you. I feel like that happens to me too when I go someplace, and then I'll say like a word that's only that they use, like wherever I visit. And I was like, did I just use? And I'll go with it. I don't know if you guys watched the movie Bridgerton.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I was using their terminology recently. I was so into the show.
Yeah.
Like what happened in that day that you first decided to race up a mountain and down a mountain?
Well, I remember because my mom's from this area of the UK, so we'd come here on family holidays, and I remember being quite young and walking up a mountain with my family and seeing kind of catching the middle of a fell race and seeing people sprinting around, and some of them had like blood pouring out of their knees and stuff, which actually doesn't happen very often, but I just remember looking at them and like being like, what are they doing? So I kind of knew of it from an early age, and I remember always thinking it'd be cool to do, but obviously it's not something that you have in flat areas like Metro Detroit. So it wasn't until I moved to the UK, and even then, I kind of didn't really know how to get started. So eventually I met some people who were into fell running and got into it that way. But it's obviously there's like there's skills involved, like running down rocky descents and things that I'd never really done before. And I wasn't very good at even running uphill. Like I wasn't particularly strong at running uphill. So I didn't come into it like just finding it easy or anything like that. And I remember going to my first race, and I was so nervous. I was just sick in the first mile of the race. I couldn't keep my breakfast down because I was that nervous. And it ended up going okay. And it's such a friendly sport. Like I did get in a few people's ways because it was a very narrow path on the way down, and like I was just going too slow, but people would just say, oh, excuse me, can I come by? So it's like, no one was there shouting at you like you're going too slow. So it was fine. And then, eventually I got better at it, and eventually started kind of traveling to other races in Europe and that sort of thing.
Wow, that's very cool. I just like that bloody knees was something that brought you into the sport.
I think it originally scared me off the sport, but yeah, there's a lot of nicer parts of it as well.
Yeah. So do you train differently for mountain running than, like, obviously you ran in college, you were a collegiate athlete, like did you train any different than that, or is there similar like workouts?
Yeah, there's definitely similar elements in terms of like, say, you know, if you're training for a 5K on the road, you might break it down into like 12 by 400 meter repeats or whatever. And the same principles apply to mountain running, where you could do hill reps, or, you know, you could do an uphill tempo for 20 minutes, but a lower intensity than what you do in a race and that kind of thing. But I definitely had a very like track and field mindset when I started training for it. And what I found is like, I do say, you know, 8 2-minute hill reps. And then when it came to actually running uphill for 30 minutes, I wasn't very good because the longest hill I'd run up was 2 minutes. So there's definitely like, I would call it a strength endurance element that takes a long time, or at least for me, took a long time to kind of build up. And especially for the descents, like the kind of forces going through your legs when you're running downhill are so much greater than when you're just running on the flat. So that takes quite a specific kind of strength as well that I didn't really have when I started. And I wouldn't say that I built that strength up very quickly either. So it took me quite a long time and a few sprained ankles to kind of get better at coming downhill. And even now, I wouldn't say it's like my forte, but I'm definitely kind of a lot more confident than I used to be. But yeah, I think the speed element of track and field is still very useful, and is probably still a part of races that I make up places would be on the kind of more runnable, flatter, gradual sections compared to the steep sections. So I think the track background still is like very much a factor for me.
No, it's really interesting. For like that downhill aspect, it's something that, I mean, I personally work on. So I would be interested, like, what kind of workouts are you doing to like strengthen those specific muscles?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just like time on your feet in the hills, and that can be anything as simple as going out for a hike. And certainly something I noticed when I started fell running or mountain running is that I could probably only do it twice a week because it was a lot to recover from, and the rest of my runs would be flat. Whereas now, like, most of my runs would be in the mountains, and if I do too much flat road running, that's when my legs get really sore. So
oh wow. It's interesting.
I went somewhere flat at Christmas, and I like just about gave myself an injury from trying to do the same kind of amount of training that I do at home. Yeah, just because it's just what your legs get used to. But I think just spending time in the hills, whether that's running at higher intensity and doing kind of an up and down tempo run, or just taking it really easy and walking or lightly jogging, like anytime that you're on a gradient, whether it's up or down, you're going to be gradually building up that kind of strength, even if it doesn't feel like you are at the time. And then obviously, like, you can kind of stress the system even more by going faster, or you know, kind of pushing the intensity, and that would be more of a stimulus kind of if you want to see bigger gains. But obviously balancing that with the injury risk is an important factor as well.
What's your favorite distance to race and why?
I like in Italy there's like a 25k, like I suppose that would be, what would that be, like just over half marathon distance. A lot of races are right around that kind of distance, and I really enjoy that because it tends to, once you've like factored all the mountains in, it tends to take you about 2 hours. And yeah, anything over 3 hours still kind of boggles my mind a little bit. Like I haven't really got my head around the long distances yet. But I kind of would think of that as more of a medium distance mountain race, and I find those fun because you can still go quite fast when you hit a more gradual section. But the other great thing about mountain racing is, like, sometimes when you hit a steep climb, the most efficient thing to do is just power hike it. So you kind of get those mental and kind of physical breaks in the race where you're not just trying to maintain a single pace the entire time. So then you can kind of attack the parts that suit you better as well.
A random question that I've been thinking about, and you're doing a lot of up and down running, is that I have been running uphill and my heart rate is like fine. Like I could get just like steep climbs I'm like really consistent with. But then when I go to run downhill, I was experiencing some like heart rate spikes of like, 180 or like almost 200. Like it got really high. And obviously I'm expecting expelling energy that way, and it doesn't feel hard when I'm doing that. How do you like combat that to keep your like heart rate manageable on like the down?
I mean, again, I'm not like the world's best descender, but if you look at the people who are like Kilian Jornet, he just looks really relaxed and almost as if he almost looks kind of floppy, as if like if he fell, it almost wouldn't be very painful. Whereas I think like you know, we can hold a lot more tension and sort of get almost kind of more rigid and use more muscle action than we need to, especially if it's like a technical descent that you're sort of like thinking really hard about or whatever. And so I think sometimes you can actually get a bit less efficient on those just by tensing up and kind of, just not necessarily just relaxing into it. So I don't know if that's something where like, and for me as well, when I'm trying to kind of improve on the descent in a training run, or I get to something where I'm like, I'm really not in my comfort zone here, then I just slow it right down as well and kind of try and find something that works a bit better. So yeah, I think the thing I've found to improve on my own descending is kind of slowing it down and trying to take a lot of the tension out of my body. And if you fall over, then you're not kind of as tensed up anyway. So theoretically,
yeah. Yeah, I know. Sometimes I'm just like, I probably am going to fall, so it's just gonna happen. I'll accept it, and then you get a little less nervous about it. But there's sometimes when, like, when I was in Arizona, and like there was really rocky sections of it, and I was like, if I fall here, this is going to feel terrible. Like they're super sharp rocks. And that's when you probably do tense up a little more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we have kind of rocks, but it'd be mixed with like really mucky, like peaty conditions, and we've had a bit of snow, and then when the snow melts, it just turns to like complete slop. So sometimes I find if you tell people beforehand you're going to fall over, then it kind of makes it less embarrassing when it happens.
Right. What's your biggest success on your trails?
I was really proud this year of I won a few races in Italy that were they have different national championships, and so there was a long distance and a VK and a relay championships all over on different weekends, and so somehow in a way that will never happen again, I managed to win those 3 races, and that was just really special for me because Italy would be kind of the home of mountain running in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of other countries that might contest that, but I think for the kind of definition of mountain running that we use when we go to the World Championships and the European Championships, it's largely based around the kind of Italian style mountain running. And they have a great history and culture around mountain running there. So and it's just a place where I visit a lot, and I really, really love Italy. So it meant a lot to kind of come away with those wins, which is just completely unexpected. And as I say, I'm not expecting to kind of repeat that. I think I need to maybe change up my races for next year so that I don't kind of fall into that trap of just trying to repeat a success that I've achieved, and kind of create some different goals where I'm not putting that kind of expectation on myself. Not that I don't think I can, have another good season, but I think sometimes if you just go back to the same races and try and replicate results from previous years, you're kind of putting unnecessary pressure around that race rather than just going and seeing what a different mountain is like in a different route and meeting different people. And that's the great thing about mountain running is that you always end up somewhere scenic, and you end up with people who love the mountains as well. So even though it was cool, I think like I don't want to just try and do that again. I want to do something different.
With all the people that you connect with and you build relationships with, do you guys form a community so you guys know, like, hey, let's meet somewhere else next?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I live where I do, which is in the northwest of England. So part of that is because we've got mountains here, but also it's kind of it's definitely a real hub of mountain running in the UK. So we've got a mountain running club locally, but there must be 6 or 7 other mountain running clubs just in this region of like 40 by 40 miles where the mountains are, that you know, there's a number of clubs and there's a real community here. And right now we're in lockdown, but in normal times we'd have like a Tuesday night club run where we go out in the mountains, and then like maybe a Sunday long run, and maybe like track or hill reps on a Thursday. So there's always like kind of people to meet up with and stuff to do, or even non-running related stuff. You kind of still know that you've got like-minded people around who are always keen to kind of go outdoors and just go for a walk or go cycling or whatever. So it's a really nice place to be.
Awesome.
Like, how many people are normally in a race, and like, can you just join, or do you have to like qualify for these? I mean, you're running at a pretty elite level. Like, what would get you to that point? Is there some races that you have to do well in, like normal running?
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, and my impression in America is that it's the same, is that it's very inclusive. So like in Italy, sometimes they have like these elite only, they're not really, I wouldn't say elite only, but they're like high level of competition races where, you know, you might want to be like having done it for a few years before you compete. But here in the UK, it's super inclusive, and yeah, you can pretty much just show up and not really have done a race before, and you'll fit right in. Like in the UK, the sport is slightly different in the sense that a lot of the time the routes aren't marked. So the thing that kind of would stop some people is the fact that you might need to know a bit of navigation, or you might need at least have run the route before so that you know where you're going. But in terms of ability level, I think it's a very inclusive kind of sport. And, you know, if you've just kind of spent a few months like getting used to running in the mountains, and you kind of know your general safety and your general navigation, then there's definitely no kind of experience requirement or ability requirement to go and do a race, which is one of the nice things about the sport.
And then how many participants are there usually?
It really depends. Like we have some super low key races here where it might be a weeknight in the spring and you get like 50 people turning up. And then we also have like English and British championship races, which the entries fill up really fast, and you might have like across men and women, you might have 700 or 800. But then I've done like a race in Switzerland, the Sierra Zinal race. I mean, they must get something like 5,000 or 6,000 people doing it. So yeah, it's really just dependent on the race. But yeah, the nice thing is that there's just loads to choose from, whether you want something low key or whether, you know, you kind of want the atmosphere and the buzz of like a huge event with like probably some famous people there and stuff. Yeah, there's like a lot to choose from.
Wow. That seems like a lot of people. Like 7,000 or 8,000 seems like really scary for like running uphill or downhill, just because you like usually want that like little space in front of you to be able to like see and not fall on somebody else or pick them up. Dominoes all the way down.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered, you know, like in Seward, there's a Mount Marathon race?
Is that the one in Alaska?
Yeah, it's in Seward, Alaska. Yeah. Have you ever considered doing that one? It's gotten like a lot more buzz now, but we used to be not as well known. But like the entire city gets taken over, and like people are camping on the side of the road, and it's just like crazy now. But
yeah, I think I've seen videos from that. It looks really cool. Definitely, it looks like you have to be a good descender.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's my like forte, but it looks really cool. And I've never, because I lived in Michigan, I've never actually done a mountain race in the States. So I'm hoping to change that in June. I'm hoping to come do a race in California. So yeah, I'd definitely like to do a few more races in the States, because I've met a few mountain runners from America, and it sounds like, well, there must just be so much to choose from because it's such a vast country and so many different mountain ranges. And so yeah, I'd really like to do a few more, but I think I'd need to work on my descending a bit more before that one.
Yeah. And then you said like Italy was like the ideal, like I guess the place to be for mountain running. the inspiration, everything. Like, what's the difference terrain wise? Like, because I've never been to Italy, like, what does it look like? How is it different?
I think one of the coolest things about the Italian races is like, so for instance, here in the UK, in our mountainous area where I live in the Lake District, we have villages like at the bottom of the mountains. But in Italy, like the mountains are much bigger. So our hills here are like maybe 3,000 foot maximum. And in Italy, obviously, it's the Alps. They're about 4 times that size. So they have villages up on the side of the hill, and so one of the cool things about a lot of their races is you'll start in a town in the valley, and you'll run up through the hill, but every so often you'll pop out in a village, and you'll just be running between like these really narrow like alleyways with 300-year-old houses on either side, and a few goats like with bells on in a field, and cobbled streets and stuff, and there's one really cool race every year in August. It's called Fletta Trail, and one of the reasons I like it is because they have a contest between all the villages, like the little mountain villages that the route passes through for the best support of the runners.
So cool.
And you come out in a village, and there's like a brass band playing, and there's like people just screaming their heads off at you, and they'll all be like dressed up as bumblebees or something, throwing water at you and stuff. It's really cool. So that's like your kind of that one's around about 25k. So you pass through maybe 6 villages, and every village will have like a different dress up theme and stuff.
So cool.
So you're never kind of running along for too long before something else interesting happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. And that would be like, so like, it's like, talk about trail running being like, oh, there's something to look at all the time. Like, that's definitely like going to distract you while you're running up this giant mountain.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Yeah.
I've been to Italy once for a wedding, and yeah, I remember being so amazed going up hills because we were trying to get to our villa, but we had to park the taxi and then walk the rest of the way because the village was on the mountain. So we had to hike up to get to our villa. And if you're running through that, that's very pretty. That's very interesting. You would definitely be distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just gorgeous. And there's so many little historic villages just like tucked away in the mountains. And they're all just almost like untouched by time, just really, really old houses. And like you say, like a lot of them aren't accessible by car and things. So it's kind of special to be able to get there, running or walking or whatever.
So cool.
When you began your races and before you started mountain racing, what is something that you wish you would have known before starting your races?
That's a good question. I wish I would have known about the kind of scene in Europe earlier, or kind of how to get into it, because I probably stayed racing in the UK and Ireland for maybe 7 years before I started going to Europe to race. And then it's only really since like 2018 that I've started doing a lot of races on the continent. And I definitely shouldn't make out like Italy's the only country with good races, because I've done some really good ones in Slovenia and Spain, and I haven't raced in Macedonia, but I've gone training there, and it was really amazing. And Bavaria in Germany, just so many places, and every place that kind of the race is a bit different, and the kind of culture around racing or how they celebrate after the race and stuff is a bit different. And so I just kind of wish I'd gotten into it earlier. I just didn't, I probably didn't really know where to start with it all. But once again, once you meet people who are doing the same thing, then you immediately can kind of figure out, where to go and what to do. And I think back to, I really don't think I'm a very coordinated person. Try and start like running downhill when I was only used to running on the flat. Like I was really bad at it, and every so often people would tell you that you're bad at it. I mean, especially because I probably improved at my uphill faster than I improved at my downhill. So there was definitely a few years there where I could kind of get to the top of the hill fairly quickly, and then just lose a load of places on the way back down, and kind of almost, like no one was unkind about it, but like people would banter about like, oh, you need to get better at this or that, and so I would kind of get that into my head, like, oh, I'm good on the uphills, but I'm not very good on the down. And of course, as soon as you start telling yourself I'm not good at this or that, then, you get to a certain part of a race, and all you can be thinking is, oh, I don't like this. This doesn't suit me. Can't wait for this part to be over, and you've immediately got this negative feedback loop in your brain of just, this doesn't suit me. People are going to pass me. And of course, what happens? And it does take a while to get better at descending, but I think you do get better at it faster if you kind of go easy on yourself and not really tell yourself that you're bad at it. And something it took me a long time to realize was, well, actually, I still haven't been doing this very long, so why don't I just kind of give myself a chance to see what happens if I keep at it. And yeah, I think just as soon as you start looking for things where you're maybe slightly stronger at, like I'm quite good at descending when it's dry, then, even if it's not going to be dry every race, you can start focusing on positives rather than just telling yourself that you're not good at something. And because it's quite a slow progression, you might be a year or two down the line, you might come down a hill and think, oh, I definitely did that better than last time, so accepting that just because you're not better than yesterday doesn't mean you're not better than 2 years ago, and just accepting that like it's a slow process, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to take a while to get better at like climbing or descending or whatever else. I've definitely realized that too. In moving to Washington, I had a long time where I was just working towards building my climbing strength, and it just took a very long time for me. I definitely didn't come naturally at all. So I can relate to that one. You kind of spoke a little bit about this earlier, but what were your goals for this upcoming year? I know that you said you didn't want to repeat goals or successes that you've already had, and I totally can relate to that because that doesn't really set you up in a good mindset. What are some goals that you are going to work on this year?
I think one of them is the Mountain Running World Cup, which I have done twice before. But the nice thing about that is that every year the races change. So there might be one or two that are the same as the previous year. But they change. So the race is scheduled for this year. One of them is the one in California, which I've never done. And then there's a race in the Czech Republic, and there's a race in France, and a race in Switzerland, and they're just all over the place. And you can kind of pick and choose. You don't have to do them all, but it's on a point system. I think it'll be like your best of 6 races or something like that. So I would like to do that again, and I think I won't necessarily feel the same kind of pressure because the races are different. And again, you get to go in new places and meet new people, and generally kind of have a party after the race and stuff. So it's quite good fun, but I'll try and find a few different ones, especially some races in the UK that I haven't done before as well. So yeah, just try and mix it up a bit.
Do you have any words of empowerment for our followers, especially those who are looking to do mountain racing or just in general?
I think just focusing on the positives, like it's a pretty basic thing, but you can get really caught up in what you don't feel good at, but focusing on the positives, and also the fact that if you're a beginner at something, you can kind of make progress a lot quicker than, say 10 years down the line when you're just looking for the marginal gains. So just enjoy being on that really steep part of the learning curve where you can see big improvements straight away, and just kind of embrace the stuff that's not going so well and know that, it's going to improve.
What or who inspires you? And then where does your drive come from for this?
I think, there's definitely a lot of really strong kind of women in mountain running who have inspired me. there's a woman here she lives in Scotland. She's called Angela Mudge, and she's won the World Championships before, and the Sky Running World Championships, and she ran for Great Britain for cross country as well. So she's quite like an all-rounder, and she's really strong fell runner, and she so her surname's Mudge, and they've kind of turned that into a verb. So if men get beaten by Angela Mudge, they call it being mudged. I think it's pretty cool that you're that good of a runner that you that your name gets turned into a verb. And so Angela is one of my inspirations, but there's some other really amazing runners like Andrea Meyer and Victoria Wilkinson. There's so many to choose from here, and definitely my mum as well, because she got me into running. So I would say she's the one who kind of she, whenever I said I kind of didn't want to go for a run, or I only wanted to do a mile or something, like she would always kind of she wouldn't make me do it if I didn't want to do it, but she'd kind of just coax me along a bit. And so I'd probably always have her voice in the back of my head as well.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Just that I think that confidence can be a big thing. And, the more that I kind of chat to other runners, the more, I become aware, because I've been running from such a young age. I suppose I've never been self-conscious about just running along a road, and I don't really think about like, oh, what do I look like, or who's noticing me or anything, like, do I look like I've got good running technique? But on the other hand, like in recent years, I've done things like jiu-jitsu and kayaking and stuff that I'm completely crap at, that, I would be very like kind of self-conscious about. So sometimes I just try and channel the confidence from one area of my life into another area when I'm just doing something that I'm kind of just making a complete mess of. But I think, if you can kind of put a lack of confidence to one side, or just try and borrow it from another area of your life, just till you kind of get going with things, then that can really help.
I notice like I'll be focusing on one thing and conquer like at one thing, but then when I try to do something else, there's muscles I've noticed I haven't been training or focusing on, and I'm like, oh, that hurts. Like, yeah. I feel bad. So hammer on the point again to that different workouts can exercise different parts of your body. So it's great to be versatile, and I do imagine that mountain running would allow you to do that.
Even if you're not a mountain runner, can take a lot of training tips away from this particular sport. And actually that made me think, Sarah actually also coaches, and I don't know if you specifically coach mountain athletes, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, so I do coach mountain runners, but I coach a full range of runners. I actually enjoy when someone comes along who does road, because it's kind of like the only kind of training that you can do paces for, and I really like numbers side of things. But I coach a complete mix, which is really fun. So like ultra trail, mountain, and then like your standard kind of road and cross country and that sort of thing. So it's definitely something where you can keep learning all the time, and it's really enjoyable. Kind of getting to see how people progress and that sort of thing. And it's another kind of aspect of my life where I've noticed, how much confidence or just kind of positive kind of feedback loops in your thought processes can really help. So I think it's definitely reinforced to me that, just kind of staying positive and accepting that things don't always go the way you want them to go, and kind of just moving on definitely works in the long run.
If athletes are trying to connect with you in order to train under you, or any other personnel is looking to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
We have a website. It's called Missing Link Coaching. So the website is missinglinkcoaching.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram as Missing Link Coach.